Hey everyone. So I've started to see, maybe anecdotally, I've started to see more content coming up, both video but also written content, about people sharing stories about losing their jobs to AI, how it's impacting them, what they're doing, and it got me thinking. I write about this. This is what I write about on Substack. I'm writing about how we are in this massively disruptive technological transition right now. Look, it's not just going to make the internet easier to access. It's not just going to make these cool chatbots, video tools, whatever, that we can do fun tricks with. This is at the most fundamental level going to restructure society as we know it. The economy is obviously going to change because of it. I mean, there's good and bad to that, but the economy is going to change. The political infrastructure that we currently rely on to govern the free world is going to fundamentally change, and I personally think it's going to move more authoritarian, but that's a topic for another day. But society itself is also going to change. As people lose jobs, how they derive meaning and value within society is going to change. It's no longer going to be sufficient to have a cushy white-collar desk job and drive a nice car and have a corner office and a good house and all that to define your worth in society. Things are going to fundamentally change, and so how we interact with one another, what we show on social media, how we portray ourselves, it's all going to change. So this is a very disruptive change to society. And so I write about this. I talk about this. This is my jam. I'm really interested in the long-term implications of this. So I talk a lot about how jobs are going to start rapidly disappearing. I think it's already underway, which I'll get into in a moment. But I'm interested in the long-term implications of this. And obviously not just AI. There's other components too that I like to dive into, but AI is a huge piece of this. And the more I encounter anecdotal stories from other people who have lost jobs, the more I realize I'm in the thick of this, and maybe it's time to maybe come a little clean and share a bit of my story with you. And honestly, what's prompting this is this article that I have pulled up that The Verge published about how that's annoying. Okay. Anyways, this was an article that The Verge had up about how. Let me find a different one actually. Okay, this is a better one. So basically, if you haven't been following the news, Google is offering buyouts to workers amid AI-driven tech upheaval. So basically, Google has lost a lot of its revenue and competitive advantage in search. People aren't really using search anymore, and so since ChatGPT launched in November 2022, I think things have fundamentally changed, and basically how the economy is structured around the internet has gone through massive upheaval. So I can't give you insight per se into how AI one-for-one is taking jobs. I can speculate and extrapolate from what I read in the news, but I can leverage my own personal experience to show you how over the past 3 years at this point, my work itself has declined, and how we've gotten to where we are today. So let me just give you a quick little backstory here, a little bit about me. So I had a full real career, if you will, before doing what I do now. Right now, I've been doing a lot of content creation, so writing. I'm starting to do more YouTube, but then also I was at freelance writing, so writing for other content creators and influencers. But before that, I lived in Washington, D.C. I had a real career. I worked as a defense contractor. My dream was to become a spy. That didn't happen, and honestly, I'm really glad it didn't. But regardless, I went to college. I lived in the Middle East. Graduated with honors, all that kind of stuff. Moved to Washington, D.C. in the summer of 2014, where I started my career. I ended up finding a bunch of different jobs in D.C. when I was there, so just a handful of them. I did open source intelligence collection in Syria, so I quite literally WhatsApp message members of ISIS to ask them how things were going in Syria. So that was part of the work I did. The most stable job I had when I was in DC is I worked on a counter-nuclear smuggling program in the Middle East, so basically preventing people like ISIS from stealing nuclear and radioactive materials and turning them into dirty bombs. And then my last contract in DC, I was part of a team that managed weapon sales to our allies and kind of figured out how to legally, because as you're probably seeing in the news with tariffs and stuff, there's a lot of export controls and rules on how certain technologies and weapons are exported abroad. So I was kind of part of a team in the Department of Defense that managed that. And so I share this backstory because in 2019 I left DC, and a lot of it was like my career didn't take off in the way I thought it was going to. I was struggling financially. Like the highest salary I ever had was in 2019 when I made $73,000 a year, which after taxes really isn't that much. And then on top of that, lifestyle inflation had obviously crept in. One of my previous jobs was on a military base in Northern Virginia, so I had a car, and so there was expenses with that. DC is a networking heavy town, so I spent money I didn't have on social capital and like trying to keep up with appearances. So I'll give you an example. Like, in 2019, I left a job, and I vividly remember going to a friend's birthday party, and one of her friends at this birthday party, someone I had met like once or twice, had like asked me to chip in to pay part of her like tab before I made an excuse to leave early because it was one of those restaurants where like cocktails were like $20-something, and they had like, I'm a vegetarian, and they had bougie like artisanal hot dogs on the menu for like $25, and I was just broke, and I couldn't do it, and I was just like, I'm out of here, I don't want to be here, and so I was like, okay, I need to leave, I have work to do, right? Use that excuse, and so I remember trying to leave, and the one girl was like, well, why don't you cover part of her tab? And at this point, like, this was hundreds of dollars that were being spent, and I was like, hard no, and I left. But I share that because I think that is part of the economic narrative that's not really being talked about. There's a lot of social pressure to spend money, and a lot of our spaces are organized around spending money, and social capital is just as important, if not more important, than a college degree these days when it comes to getting a job. So living in DC, like, yes, the cost of living in DC was extraordinarily high, but also I don't think I was able to invest in building the social capital I needed to sustain a career in DC, in part because I just didn't have the money. I didn't have the cash. I was constantly in the red, and I'm still paying for that today. And then a lot of things happen. I'm not going to say like I'm blameless. Like, yeah, I did buy some like overpriced avocado toast and too many lattes and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not blameless, but I recognize that there were systems at play that weren't going to enable me to get the job I wanted. So I made the decision to call it quits, and I moved out of DC in January 2020. Looking back, what's interesting about this is I think this is part of a larger story that I'm going to dive into as I share some of the details of my freelance work with you. But my career was never stable. So the longest period of time I had a W-2 full-time job was from February 2016 to June 2018. Before that, from 2014 to 2016, I had a series of internships because that's how you got started in DC. I had my first job in early 2015, my big girl job where I collected intelligence in Syria. I was paid $16 an hour to literally talk to members of ISIS online. I was effectively laid off from that job 6 months later, because the company that had hired me lost the government contract I had been hired under. And so what you may not realize with government contracting, especially in the DC suburbs and companies that cater to the US government, is that your billable work is tied to contracts. So if you are on a contract and your employer loses that contract, like that's effectively like their source of revenue. So it's kind of like in the private sector, if you're selling a widget and like the widget is no one's buying the widget, like your whole team's going to get laid off, right? Because you're not generating revenue for the company. So it's the same thing with government contracting. And so they had hired me and hedged that they would get the contract. They didn't, so they didn't have any money to pay me, so they let me go. And so, I spent the next probably like 6 to 8 months applying for jobs. I did a couple like temporary stints, was doing some administrative work, worked at a coffee shop before I got my job working on the counter-nuclear smuggling program. I ended up leaving that in 2018 for personal reasons, but then I ended up finding, I got recommended for an opening, again with another government contractor in November 2018. Yeah, November 2018. Full-time, but kind of like the first contract I was on, this one was set up for failure. There was just a lot of lowercase p politics, office politics involved, and so unsurprisingly, like when the contract came up for renewal, my employer didn't win it, and I was effectively told like I need to go to a contract I had previously been on and didn't want to be on anymore, or I was done. So that's when I decided I was going to leave DC. But I share all this to say like even before where I'm at now, my career wasn't stable. I didn't have a stable foundation, and I'm beginning to wonder if that's more like a byproduct of the economy we're in, and like none of us were aware of it because no one really talks about it, right? Like I remember a recruiter from Deloitte made me cry on the phone because she told me it looks like I couldn't keep a job, and it's not like I didn't want to work, but just like there was a lot of circumstances out of my control. Like I kind of got caught up in some security breaches when I was in DC that delayed my ability to get a security clearance. So a security clearance that should have taken maybe a month or two for me to get, a low-level one, ended up taking more than a year. I think it was closer to like 14, 16 months. So like just like stuff like that wasn't in my control, right? So I found it really hard to find stability, and different sectors of the economy are going to be different. At least in government work, it wasn't as stable as I thought it was. So I ended up leaving, and that job ended in 2019. I moved out 2020. Obviously, COVID happened, and that changed a lot of things for everyone. I was supposed to work with a startup, and I moved back to upstate New York. I was supposed to work with a startup there. That ended up, none of us really knew what to do, basically. Like, I think that's safe to say for everyone. Like, no one really knew what to do, so like, I did what I could for as long as I could, and then I couldn't really do much anymore. So I did some personal travel during that time, and tried to dabble, did some side hustling, but I didn't really have like a secure, stable foundation from 2020 to 2021 either. And I did not take any public handouts. I was technically like self-employed, working for myself. I didn't. I think I applied for. After that short-term contract ended, I think I applied for unemployment in New York, but because I had made too much at the end of 2019, I didn't qualify, and then I didn't want to deal with all the paperwork and the administrative hassle of getting unemployment, and that's probably a good thing because I don't want to rely on the government, so I didn't take a single handout or any sort of government assistance, no PPP loans, nothing like that. So I had virtually no income. So fast forward to 2022. Sorry, let me back up real quick. Okay, so in the midst of all this from like 2019 onward, I had started writing online. I'd gotten really interested in the personal finance space. I'd attended a conference in DC and started a blog, and so I was really bought into like the Tim Ferriss model of like the 4-hour work week and making internet money, and I thought it was legitimate. Again, that's another video for another day. Turns out it's a pretty big Ponzi scheme. Multi-level marketing scheme. Like, the internet money doesn't actually exist. Regardless, I had started writing online, so I had some work, and then I was dabbling on Medium a little bit, publishing my own essays. Again, like at this point, I was still kind of focused on like low-level stuff on like Instagram and just low quality like influencer kind of stuff. I was trying to vlog and post those on YouTube. So I had a lot of like failed starts at content. But by 2022, I had enough content on my personal finance site that even though it wasn't making me money, like I made like maybe $200 for like the 5 or 6 years I had it up online. It was at least like proof that I could write, and it was a portfolio that I could submit. So when one night I just happened to find a position open on LinkedIn, and I just like serendipitously applied to it. A couple weeks later, I applied and got it. So I got my first paid freelance writing job in 2022. Also, I apologize. I have my notes written here, so if I look over to the side, that's what I'm looking at. So I got my first writing job in 2022. So this was probably about May 2022. This was for a feminist digital publication, which I'm not really going to name. It's had a lot of issues. I'm not really a fan that I worked for them, but girl has to make money. So I got paid $600. So at this point, this was a fixed price contract. I don't really know. I don't have much data from that time, unfortunately. So I wasn't keeping it, but I made $600 per newsletter. I was contracted to write 4 newsletters, and they were about 1,000 to 1,500 words each. So it probably took me a few hours to write. So I had, at this point, I was moving to Austin. I was planning on living in that summer of 2022, I was moving to Austin, planning on living in my car when I moved to Austin. I got as far as Asheville, North Carolina. I stayed there for a year, and I eventually did move to Austin. So I am currently in Austin, Texas, finally. But I took a really weird route to get there. So I thought I had done a great job, got a lot of good feedback, that they were gonna keep me on in a part-time capacity, and they didn't. And I was like, oh boy, what do I do? So that was when some panic set in. Fortunately, a couple things also happened towards the end of 2022. So one of their writers had gone on maternity leave, so they reached out to me. So even though it didn't work out that summer, a couple months later, they did bring me back on, and I continued doing some of the same newsletter writing I was doing before, and I was getting paid $40 an hour to do that. At the same time, I started doing SEO freelance writing for blogs. So someone who I had connected with back in 2019 at that conference I went to in DC, and I had participated in a couple of her group Zoom calls in the interim. She was an editor for a bunch of publications, and she thought of me. So I think it was August of 2022. She reached out to me and said, hey, I have a couple clients that need some help writing. Would you be willing to write? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I was like, yeah, why not? So I started in earnest freelance writing in 2022. At the same time, I got monetized on Medium, so I started publishing more essays on Medium. So in November 2022, I made $26.12. So I rounded out the year with about $100 in income from Medium. So I wasn't doing the other work I was doing at this time. When I was in North Carolina, I was door dashing, which wasn't really good. I was flipping stuff on eBay because I've always done that. And then I was doing this freelance work and then writing my own work. So I had one consistent project-based client and 2 consistent freelance clients. So I was like, okay, hey, maybe this will work. Now, I'm going to show you some numbers here. I decided, let me pull up 2022. So I have been tracking obsessively my time. So I track my time. So I log into software called Clockify every time I do work. And so I literally record everything I do. So I can tell you how the word count of every single client article and personal article too that I've written, how much the fee was based on, and sometimes the fees are fixed, sometimes the fees are based on per word, how much it took me to write, what my hourly rate is, and then what my hourly rate after self-employment. One thing you might not realize is if you're a W-2 worker, you pay a lower tax than someone who's self-employed. Out of pocket, I have to pay my own Medicare, Social Security tax that an employer would usually pay on your behalf. So I have to pay that out of pocket as if I'm my own employer. So I have a much heavier tax burden than you all do. So anyways, I have all this data here. So basically in 2022, this is what I was looking at. If I was doing about $259 per article. It took me about 3-ish hours to write every article. So my hourly rate was $86 an hour. Gross. My gross rate is not terrible. So what I would do to figure out what this is worth, if I did a salary equivalent based on a 20-hour per week schedule, assuming I had enough workflow to keep me busy for 20 hours per week, I would make about $86,000 a year, which pretty good. not bad. So with this information in mind, like, and because I had started getting monetized on Medium, like this was the direction I was going. And so 2023 ended up being a fantastic year for me. Let me start. Okay, so the client, the first client I got, the feminist digital media publication, they kept me on in 2023, but in a different capacity. So instead of being a writer, being paid $40 an hour, I basically got demoted to being a fact checker at $35 an hour, which is ironic because I also had to fact check their annual State of Women report, and in the report it complained about the gender pay gap and how women are paid less, and this company literally gave me a decrease. Like at this point I've been working with them for over an hour or a year, and they had effectively decreased my income. So take that with for what you will. Okay, so I went from that. So the trade-off with this though, and I haven't really publicly talked about this, but I'm just gonna say it. So they paid for blocks of time. So I was scheduled to say fact check an article I was scheduled to be their fact checker from say like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And so I would have to be available on Slack, so when they were ready for me to fact check, I could fact check. Well, depending on how their workflow was, the whole team, all the teams were remote, so depending on how the workflow was, like I might not have work for like an hour or two. So I used that time to get other work done, and so it actually benefited me tremendously. Like I hated it. I hated doing fact checking. It was bullshit. But it gave me consistent income, and it gave me a consistent schedule to work within. So there was a benefit to it. And so I did that. At the same time, my SEO, so all of this content here, this is my freelance writing, my SEO content. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned that before. The freelance stuff I was doing was SEO content for personal finance blogs. So kind of writing stupid articles about like, should you invest in this? Or like, a review of this budgeting app, or like what are the CD rates, certificate deposit rates at this bank for this month, like just stupid stuff. But like you'll see here, like it paid well, so I can't complain. So like I said, so in 2022 when I started, I was getting paid about 15 cents per word, about $259 per article, and I was making about $87 per hour. So in 2023, my average per word rate went up to 27 cents a word. My average per article rate went up to about $373, and my average hourly rate went up to about $147 an hour. So part of this was because I got some higher paying work. So one of those new clients I got was a website called Forbes Advisor, which was a great partner to work with. So here's some of the stuff I did for them. Like I did a bank review, digital wallets, some updates. So how they structured it is they paid a flat fee. So it's a $250 fee for changes and modifications to existing content, and it was a $500 fee for new content. So they were my highest paying client. And so that was all great. Like everything was great. Like again, doing the thing here with my numbers, like you can't beat these. So if I did that same like salary equivalent, so if I work 20 hours a week, I'd be almost $150K almost, right? And if I did just 19 articles per month, I would still be at like 85,000. So like the math on my spreadsheets, maybe I did this wrong. I don't know. The math on my spreadsheets seem to be doing really well. Unfortunately, so everything was kind of going up. There was some like give and take. So at the beginning of the year, at the end of 2022, the clients I was working with like wrapped up. They I think they got sold or something. But I remember one night in December, I got an email like, "Hey, freelancers, like don't like stop work immediately. We're not gonna like continue with you, blah blah." So like I actually started 2023 like in a panic because I didn't have like my clients were like disappearing. I was like, I don't know what to do. And so fortunately, like things changed because I was able to get some new work. So like Forbes Advisor had reached out to me and I got some new work. On top of that, I had pitched my first article. So like I said, I worked for the government. I understood Department of Defense, like military stuff, strategy, Middle East security. I did not understand like journalism and pitching and all that. Like it's been a whole learning curve for me. So I didn't know any of this. And so I ended up for a variety of reasons. I got a job at Waffle House when I was living in North Carolina, and so I just came up with this idea to like submit a pitch to Business Insider about how I basically made $1.92 an hour, which is like after taxes and stuff came out to like what I was making. And that was my first pitch, like first cold pitch ever to a publisher, and it got accepted. And so I was paid, they bought 2 articles for me. So I talked about being a server, and then why I ended up leaving Waffle House because it just wasn't worth it. So I made $800 off that year. But that was like, oh, okay, maybe I can like pitch work and that kind of thing. The other thing that happened in 2022 or 2023 is that my income started going up, and so with Medium. So I was still consistently publishing on Medium. I should pull this up. Let's pull this up, shall we? So I no longer publish on Medium. If you want to go to my profile, you are more than welcome to read why. There's a lot to it. But let me show you the partner program. So this is how much you earn on Medium. So in 2023, like I did this thing in June where I wrote an essay a day and published it on Medium, and I ended up having my first 4-figure month. So I made almost $1,700 just writing on Medium. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. So like that kind of changed things for me. It made me realize like, oh, maybe I can make money writing on Medium. So like everything was looking up in 2023. Like I had no reason to have any issues. I ended up having my highest earning month ever. And I understand with freelance writing, like you're gonna have highs and lows, and I didn't properly, budget for the future in anticipation that like the pace of work wouldn't continue, and I would have go through valleys as well as like have good months. So I didn't do a good job budgeting for that. So that's on me. But my highest earning month in 2023 was in October, and I earned $13,116, which is the most money I've ever earned in a single month that I've billed for work. So I was like, okay, things, at this point, like Medium was taking off. I had stable freelance work. I had sold pitches to Business Insider, so I was feeling confident. So like things were looking up. So around the same time, that's when I moved to Austin, and I had kind of so I had some like extra expenses with that. Obviously, but I had kind of forecasted my spending into 2024 based on where I was at 2023 and the move to Austin. So like my cost of living in North Carolina was substantially lower than what it was in Austin. So that has also created some personal hardship, but that kind of goes with life. So that's how like 2023 was looking great, doing well, like on top of the world. Okay, so let's jump to 2024. Okay, so at the end of 2023, 2 things happened. So that publication, the digital feminist publication I was working with, who gave me stable work, we had parted ways, I think like in October, so right around when I moved to Austin. They'd actually offered me a full-time gig, working with them for $70,000 a year, but they wanted to retain all rights to my personal publishing calendar, so basically telling me what I could and could not write on Medium, and I was like, absolutely not. And it ended up working out because like a year later they laid off their entire team. So maybe it would have been like some sort of gain. I don't know that I would have necessarily come out ahead with that. So I decided to like bet on myself and continue self-publishing. And I was still doing freelance writing for SEO content for personal finance blogs. And so at the end in December 2023, one of my clients like started slowing down work and went totally ghost. Like the year before, they had at least sent us all an email and was like, hey, we're like going to stop working with our freelancers, but this person like just kind of went off the face of the earth and just stopped responding to messages. And it's unfortunate because they had also contracted me to work on an investing course with them, and so both the SEO work, the content I was writing plus the investing course, like both kind of dropped off. And so like if you have a steady stream of work for month after month after month, and then it disappears, you're just kind of like, well, what the heck? And again, like I didn't have a freelance writing background, so I didn't know to like constantly be looking for work and trying to get more work than I could handle. Like I was in a good spot and I was content with it, and like my long-term goal is to write and do my own content. It's not to keep doing freelance work anyway, so like I didn't see the need in kind of doing that. So that happened. And so in 2024, my work started slowing down. But the thing, so my work started slowing down. Okay. Before I jump too much ahead, let me see. Okay, so my work started slowing down. I had moved to Austin. I was starting to do some consulting work too, so I had about 6 clients I was doing special projects with. And I was thinking too, I wanted to go that route because I knew per hour I was probably more valuable doing like advising and consulting work than actually like writing content for people. And so that was great. I made about like $7,000 last year doing that. But by June, all of that had fizzled out. I was working with 2 of the clients, kind of on like a commission structure. So like I would do the work up front and then I would get like a percentage of whatever like outcome, whether that was a sale. One was a proposal for a grant, so like a percentage. Don't ever do that. I stupidly did that and it just didn't work out. And then the other ones just kind of fizzled out. People don't have money. People don't have money. They haven't had money for a while. And I think people buy into the idea of like wanting to invest in their businesses and they just don't have money. So I wasn't at a spot where I could like I wasn't at a confidence level where I could work with larger clients with larger budgets, and like the people I was working with were just not stable. So I was doing freelancing, or I was doing consulting again like that. I had like an $11,000 month in 2024, I think it was like February. So again, like it was giving me like a confidence that things were going okay, but by the time the year ended, like that didn't end up being the case. Okay, and so things like kind of started declining. So I had the one client that I said had dropped off freelance-wise, and then in March, another client, Forbes Advisor, had dropped off as well. I'm gonna dive in deeper with that in a bit. So like, hold that thought for the moment. But in March, they had let go of their entire freelance team, so I was out of them. So I had started the year with like 3 clients. I lost 2. By August, I had found 2 new clients, but like one was at a much lower rate. So I was doing work for them and my average article rate was like $300 an article, and then my average hourly rate was about $98 an hour. So compared to like 2024, like that's a pretty significant drop. And then another one I shouldn't have ever signed up to work for them, but I did. They had people write articles for $70. I think I have it here. Do I have it here? Yeah, this one. Like these 2. Like, and it just, the math didn't math. So I had done 2 articles with them. I was on their payroll for like 2 weeks, and I was gonna quit. And then they ended up sending an email like, hey, we're letting go of all of our freelance teams. And this relates to a bigger change that happened, but they were letting go with people. So like I was fine to leave them. I was also, doing more pitching, but again, like it didn't, I think I started taking it seriously too late. So in like July, August was when I actually heard the term letter of introduction for the first time. I didn't know what that was. So I started sending those out, cold reaching out to editors, connecting with them on LinkedIn. So in 2024, I sold 1 article for $1,000. Again, like not, it's this one right here, it's 3,000 words. So, took me less than about 9 hours to write, so it's still not bad. But I got 1, like out of however many pitches I did in 2024, I only got 1. And then I also was focusing on self-publishing a lot on Medium, and something happened, and I don't know what happened or what they did. Something happened, and so as you can see here, these are my actual earnings, like legit. So in January 2024, I earned over $3,000 on Medium. This was when that client went AWOL, totally disappeared, didn't tell me. So like the hole they left in my budget was filled by Medium, and so I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. Like if this continues, like I'll be fine. And so like things were okay. I $400 here, okay, $1,400 a month. But then things started to decline, and so by October I was earning like $142, and like I had some good stories, some good articles, and like you only get paid on Medium if you get boosted. So like this one was substantially, had never paid for anything again, like viewed and read up far more than this one with the little arrow here that was boosted, and it got paid about the same. So like you can see like the reading just like totally dropped off, and I wasn't getting paid anything. So it's like, okay, like a year ago I could bet on some things to come through and like get the boost, but now it just clearly wasn't. So I moved to that's why I moved to Substack. But that being said, as much as I complain about this, my combined income across both Substack and Medium for 2024 was about $8,500. So, like, for someone who writes their own content, like, that's really not that bad. It's really not that bad. And my best month, like, was 2024. Like, even though there was a massive change that happened, that gets me to where I'm at now, like, it was a really good month. Okay, so let's dive into what happened. So I had mentioned before I was working Forbes advisor. So like there's some of the contents here. So in March 2024, Google did a major core update, and this was to compete with AI. So this is where I'm getting into like how AI has effectively taken my job. So they did a massive core update where they focused on reducing low quality AI generated content and prioritizing user first content. So basically like the internet, I don't know how to explain this. Okay. So basically like when I wrote my SEO content, it was like repurposing content that had already been written. It wasn't like there's only so much you can say about like 13-month CD rates, right? Like there's not a lot of room there for flexibility. And so I was there wasn't a lot I could do. So anyways, this algorithm change. So in trying to compete with AI and like Google changed their search, and in doing so, they went after websites like Forbes Advisor, which are basically affiliate websites that promote content. So like basically if you read the review I wrote about the Millie Bank on Forbes Advisor and you clicked a link and you decide to set up an account, Forbes Advisor would earn a commission. And I didn't know this when I really started working with Forbes Advisor. Again, like I'm still new to a lot of the digital world, but there's a lot of companies that do this. So Wall Street Journal's Buy Side is an example of this. CNN Underscored is an example of this. USA Today's Blueprint is an example of this. All these like established journalistic outlets that are like have credibility, or they used to anyways. They all have these affiliate websites, and so they would hire freelancers to write a lot of their content. Well, when Google made the algorithm change, their search traffic just tanked. It tanked, and overnight revenue declined. So all these people all at once got rid of all their freelance teams. So suddenly you have like this massive supply of unemployed writers in this particular niche, like all looking for work. And like I was only doing this for like a year at this point. Like who was I going to compete with people who've been doing it for like a decade? I just didn't have the connections or the depth, and didn't have the client roster, right? I needed to like be able to adapt. So my work basically in 2024 had been front loaded to the first half. So most of my income was generated in the first 6 months, and then it kind of started trickling off the next 6 months. Again, like I had some stuff here or there, enough to keep me going, but honestly not enough to pay the bills. And so I like just wasn't getting anywhere, and like I ended up having to dip into my savings. So I had like an emergency fund set up. So even though I kind of critiqued myself for not planning ahead when I had my like big high earning months in 2023, I did save some. So I had like an emergency fund set up. I had some savings, and I just went through all of that and just started, using credit cards, as most people do, more heavily, and becoming more reliant on those in 2024. And so that gets us to where we are today. So all this is happening as like ChatGPT has come online, people are starting to use it more, and like you're reading about AI layoffs in the news. So like that kind of like, I didn't see it at the time, but the change in search, how people use AI, the ability of AI to write content, how people consume content, fundamentally changed what I was doing and what I was being paid to do as a freelancer. And so let's jump to 2025. So 2025, I started the year with 3 freelance clients again. Last week I got notified that another one was going to stop issuing work. So one just stopped, hasn't like said anything to me, just kind of stopped issuing work. Another one kind of, again, did the same thing with going ghost for a little bit, coming back. They announced they're going to freeze all their work. And then I have a third one, the one I got last year that pays a much lower rate. But they've started slowing down work. So and last year they would issue me new work every couple of days. Now it's like weeks are passing by, so it's hard for me to like plan. If I say I can complete X amount of articles in a month and like anticipate next month's paycheck is going to be based on that number of articles, and I only do half of that, like that's a huge problem. And so that's been problematic. And so my rates have obviously like gone down. I'm earning less, and then obviously inflation has a lot to do with this too. Like this particular client, I've been doing work with them for like 2 years, and I haven't asked for a rate increase because I've been kind of mindful that where we are in the economy and where things are going, and I just don't want to rock the boat. And so like the value has obviously gone down here, right? Because $250 in 2022 is very different than what it is today. So anyways, that's been happening. I was still like willing to accept consulting work, but I'm just kind of burned out at this point. Like I had one person reach out to me. I sent them I did some pre-work to prove that I could do the work they were looking for. They reached out to me, they took my time. I like invested in providing them proof I could do the work, wrote a proposal. I'm like, they just ghosted me, and I've come to realize, I didn't know this was a thing until you don't know until you know, that a lot of people will have you write proposals so then they can steal like the framework you've developed within the proposal and how to structure the work, and then they'll like outsource it to someone cheaper. So I've just stopped doing consulting work because I just can't afford to keep playing those games. And so then obviously I've been trying to aggressively pitch new content or new articles to folks. So I sent a bunch of letters of introduction in 2024, still was sending them in 2025. I've gotten two acceptances from all the work I've done, which I'm going to use like acceptance loosely. So one, I sent a cold letter of introduction to someone in 2024, got back to me, like the cadence of communication has been quite slow, but in February they agreed to work. It's now May, and I've requested a contract several times. They haven't given me the contract. They take 4 weeks at a time to respond, so I'm not confident that that's going to work out. And then I sold a pitch. I responded to a pitch call. There's all these like email newsletters you can get on with pitch calls from like different publications. So Business Insider used to be one of them. So I responded to one from Apartment Therapy, which is like a website, or The Kitchen, which is part of Apartment Therapy. So for $200, I wrote an article for them. I submitted the pitch in February. The pitch was accepted in April. The article was due in May and published in May. And then as of today, June 11th, I finally am being paid for it. So that took 4 months of work for $200. And like, it's basically volume, right? So just do the math. Like the volume is not there anymore. And at the same time, prices and content and value has been, prices have been dropping. So I want to dive into, this is what I want to dive into and why I pulled this up. Okay, so I talked about, you can read this here. I'll link this in below. But I talked about how AI is taking over writing, and I think a lot of people think it's taking over as it's going to do the writing for me. And in some cases it is, but it's also restructuring the economy around the work you do. So in my case, it has restructured Google's algorithms and search and how people access information. So doing SEO content, search engine optimized content, to attract readers to your website was the thing to do in the past, and that's no longer relevant. So any industry that has to deal with that is seeing a setback right now. So for a writer like me, that means like I'm not getting the work I need to do to like keep myself afloat. Okay, so like I said, Forbes Advisor was one of my clients. They paid me $250 for updates, $500 for new articles. On average, it took me about 3.5 hours to complete, and I've showed you my spreadsheet. Like the math, like $150 an hour to do a lot of this work. Like really not that bad. So Google made an algorithm change, like I said, in March 2024. So they started penalizing folks like Forbes Advisor who hired freelance writers like me. So they just let go. They were like, hey, we're going to stop issuing work. And it's not like, the problem with freelancing is it's not like everything else where you get like severance and a pink slip. Like they just stop issuing work and there's no notice. And you're just kind of like, well, okay, what do I do now? So I'm going to show you how AI is displacing work in real time and how bad things are gone. So this is This is a screenshot right here of a position at Forbes Advisor that was posted on LinkedIn about a week ago, so like end of May 2025. Okay, so this position is it's a temporary contract, so it's a 40-hour full-time but temporary contract internship, and I use that internship because this is basically a loophole to get around paying benefits. So it's a full-time job that's being framed as a contract-based. Okay. It's a full-time job being framed as an internship, and it's for a contract, so they don't have to pay benefits. And because it's a contract, they can let you go if like work doesn't pick up, and they don't have to pay you severance. Okay. So this is loopholes, right? Okay. So they're paying this position 20 hours a week. Okay. So again, like I worked for Forbes Advisor as a freelance writer. I don't know that these are going to be the same articles, but I can give you my perspective, right? So it says you'll write 3 to 5 stories per day, okay? And so you do a 40-hour work week, 3 to 5 articles per day. Like that's 15 to 25 articles per week. Like 2024. Let me go back to 2024. Like, this is all my Forbes Advisor stuff right here. This is my hourly rate. Okay. $20 an hour. Like, that is where we're at right now. This is what's happening. So so it's not even just like AI is taking jobs at this point, because it is, right? But it's also degrading the quality of jobs that remain. And this is paying 88% less. This position, I'm assuming it's similar comparable work to what I did, 88% less than what I was making. And so like I've kind of started to crunch some numbers and do the math of like, well, what's going on here. And so from my highest point in 2023 to May 2025, my income has dropped 80%. And it's not for a lack of trying. Like it's not for not trying. Like, yes, I understand like I am like kind of going uphill a little bit and there's a lot like I don't know. But it's not for not trying. Like algorithms changed, Google's algorithm changed, Medium's like boosting credentials changed, like just things have changed and a lot of it's being driven by AI. And so there's been like a lot of layoffs as well. And so the publications that I pitched like 2 years ago, I can't pitch. So, you know, this was in the news recently, just last week. Business Insider / 21% of their staff. And it's because of AI. Like they're going to AI. And it's because if you've ever read like articles like this, like you are the product and they sell advertising. Like that's how they make revenue. So anytime like the end consumer, like you, the reader, or the end consumer, like the business model is based on revenue. Like that's how YouTube works, right? Like hopefully one day I'll become monetized and like I'll earn ad revenue. Like that's how all this works. So if people are no longer like reading, I mean, there's also a lot to this too, like dead internet theory and bots and all that. So it's not even just like AI. There's like, this is very complex and there's a lot to it. But what I'm trying to say is the business model has broken, so there's no longer revenue generation, so there's no longer a need for the workers, and AI is a replacement to help cut costs to keep the business model going. So the business models of these digital media and publications is going under a massive adaptation, and that's kind of, you know, what's happening. And so one of the big shifts, like I said, again, it has to do with AI. I've written about this, but Google search is like tanking, and it's because people have stopped using Google and they're now using ChatGPT and other sources, AI-based sources of information, or they're using the snippets at the top of the search feed, right? So they're not clicking through the pages anymore. So the first time ever, Google's been in business for 2+ decades at this point. Okay, Google has a monopoly on search, so 90% of searches go through Google. Just so we all understand how important Google is. So they had their first drop in searches, year-over-year drop in searches, because of this, because of all the changes that are happening because of AI. And now, like, you know, that was May. I wrote that in May. And like a couple weeks later, they're offering buyouts to their search division. So clearly something has changed. You know, it's clear like AI has taken my work. not directly, of course, indirectly. And that's why this is all problematic, is because people are assuming like AI and robots are just going to come in and take people's jobs one for one. And it's more subtle than that. And because like I wasn't prepared, you're probably not prepared. Like none of us are prepared for it. That's kind of where we're at. So kind of, where do you go from here, right? So I can tell like this wonderful, not wonderful, but like, the sob story of, okay, I left a career, I pivoted, I tried something new, had some really good success, but it didn't last very long, and now I'm here. So like, what do you do? Like, there's no work. Clearly there's no work. I've stopped pitching at this point. Like, I'm not going to do 4 months worth of work for a $200 paycheck that I don't even get to keep the whole full $200, right? Because I pay more in taxes than, the average W-2 employee. So like, where do you go from here? So the one thing I'm doing is I'm doubling down on my own content creation, my own writing, because like I think this is the future. Like, and I think we're seeing this because a lot of independent journalists are starting to move towards Substack. I think this is independent content creation is where it's going. So this is what I'm investing in. So I write about the future of work. I'm looking at capitalism because that is fundamental. We're moving into a new economic model. I talk about like the social consequences of this. And so if you want to like read and subscribe, I would love that. That would help me out immensely. But obviously I know that like this isn't going to be sustainable for much longer either, because like there's only so many publications like people can read and subscribe to, and I can't compete with Matt Taibbi, right? So it's like how do I earn an income for myself? Because right now I think I've gotten $1,400 combined so far this year. And we're in June, so $1,400 from both Medium and residual income from Medium, and then from Substack. So it's not enough to live off of, obviously. Yeah, this is where I'm investing most of my time because it's clear like freelancing isn't where it's at, and like pitching publications isn't where it's at. So you can subscribe here. This is a good way to keep tabs on my work. But I'm also starting to publish more on here on YouTube because I recognize the importance of a diversification, and so I do commentaries like this, and I'll talk about some of the articles I've written, some of the articles I've read, and you can kind of look at those, and if you'd love to subscribe, that would be helpful as well. But again, like I share this, and I'm also like, okay, now what? Like Tim Pool had a really interesting bit about this, covering VO3, which is Google's new video software, and how it can, how do you know this entire video is real? Like, you don't. We're at that point in the world, and so I don't know how to solve that problem either. So I'm struggling because I don't even know, like, is it worth investing in doing YouTube and trying to grow YouTube, knowing that like the value is about to decline because of VO3 and other AI video tools. So I don't know. I write about this. This is what I do. I spend all day, every day writing about how AI is taking everyone's jobs, and I've just laid out for you how it's taken my job, and I don't even know where to go from here. Like, I don't know what skills like I have to offer. There's no point applying for jobs, right? Because the jobs are disappearing, and I just don't have the skills or desire to work in a W-2, office job. Freelancing is quickly disappearing. Content creation is still an option, but it's not paying, right? Like, there's just a lot of competition, and I understand that. And so it's like, okay, where do you go from here? And so yeah, that's I just wanted to share, like, that's kind of where I'm at. So it was a couple things. So if you want to subscribe to the channel, that would be helpful. I'm trying to figure out how to monetize this and see if this can be something, so that would be helpful. Subscribe to Tomorrow Chan Substack. Like, I write about this regularly. I publish a newsletter every Sunday about like things that are happening in the news to keep track of all of this. And then if you want to support me directly, I'll put my Buy Me a Coffee link in below. Like, I come to a lot of coffee shops and do a lot of work from coffee shops, so that would be that'd be helpful as well. But like I'm I wanted to share this because I'm in the same boat everyone else is. Like, I'm someone who's writing about this from like, not like an expert level, but like a top level, like trying to explain it and explain what's happening and share my vision. And I'm also impacted by this directly. So like, AI is here, it's taking our jobs, and I try to be optimistic and share tips for adapting. So I think, obviously blue collar work is going to come back. So if you can and are willing to do a trade, I think you should do that. If you're a student and you're watching this and you're still in college, or you're thinking about going to college, I would recommend dropping out immediately. That's like, again, another video for another day. No one should be in college right now. It's just, that's a losing bet. I also have a controversial opinion that I think traditional femininity and womanhood is going to come back, and I think more and more women are going to be displaced from the AI displacement than men, and because men can go to blue collar work and women are going to not choose that option. So I think we're going to see a resurgence in traditional gender values and more women returning to the home because of AI displacement. And I think entry-level, Gen Z, like I said, is going to be impacted the most by this because they're just not going to have a stepping stone. And I've actually written pretty extensively. You can go read a 4-part series I wrote called The Gen Z Employment Crisis that really talks about some of the structural problems that are happening. But I think changes are happening. I don't know. I'm going to say this. I don't know that people can adapt fast enough. Like, I'm using ChatGPT. I'm using what I can, like learning as I go. I can't learn it fast enough, right? And like, I love to learn. So I spend hours on it, daily. And I'm trying to get better, but there's only so much you can do. And so I think we just need to like recognize what's happening. This is where it's at. And, as someone who writes about it and who has experienced it, like I think like it's happening, and most of us are not prepared for it. And if you've lost your job and are struggling, like, just know you're not alone. I think we're all in this together, and we're gonna have to figure it out. So yeah, thanks for watching, and definitely subscribe and like, and let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below.